Now from Times Square, here's what you need to know.
The CDC has reported an increase in the number of kids being diagnosed with ADHD since the pandemic. What is this all about?
Yeah, so let me take you through this medical headline because it's getting a lot of attention from parents, pediatricians, anyone who has a child in their life. Survey data analysis from over 45,000 parents compiled by the CDC. What they found is that 1 in 9 children has a diagnosis of ADHD. Almost 3.5 million children aged 3 to 17 are on a prescription ADHD medication. One of my children happens to be one of them, even though a little outside of that age group. There was an increase in the stimulant prescriptions written to girls versus the pre-pandemic years. Girls tend to be underdiagnosed and therefore undertreated for ADHD. And I will tell you, there's a range of options in treating ADHD. For my child, when that diagnosis was made and when medication was started, it was a game changer. So parents should talk to their child's pediatrician if they have any concerns.
Why are we seeing these increases in numbers? It's a big increase.
It's unclear, but I will tell you, anyone in healthcare, any doctor knew at the time that the pandemic was going to be having an impact on children in a very vulnerable stage in their development that we might not see until several years down the road. And that's one of the things this study is pointing to.
All right, Doc, thank you.
You bet.
Let's turn now to ABC's Melissa Dunn in Los Angeles with your latest headlines. Hey, Melissa.
Hey, Eva, good to be with you. So let's get started in some of the news that we are tracking. We're beginning with the new severe weather threat after hundreds of storms slammed the heartland, the South, and the East Coast over the holiday weekend. Our Ginger Z with the latest.
The busiest severe weather season to date in 13 years. More than 1,330 severe storm reports, including 76 reported tornadoes. Many were deadly. At least 22 lives were lost. And one of the really strong EF2 tornadoes there ripping through the Shell gas station where people were inside. You can see the shelves being torn apart right in front of them. Thankfully, they were okay. But what we'll see is more of that. We already started the morning with a lot of action around Dallas-Fort Worth. And now the atmosphere settles and then reignites along this dry line. So from west to east, Abilene, Dallas, Waco, Austin, and San Antonio, you're in that enhanced risk today, but it's also coming with a threat for flash flooding.
Thank you, Ginger. Well, that rough weather complicating the trip back home. On a record-breaking weekend for holiday travel, thousands of flights delayed across the country. Passengers out of New York, Florida, and Atlanta facing some of the worst delays on Memorial Day. More than 795 flights delayed today, and at least 135 flights canceled, and more are expected. Well, over in New York, closing arguments starting with the defense set to begin in the criminal trial against former President Donald Trump. The jury could begin deliberating as early as tomorrow, and Trump has denied all wrongdoing. And the business move that may affect millions, T-Mobile to acquire U.S. Cellular. That's expected to provide T-Mobile with 4 million new customers, provide more rural areas, and spectrum rights to carry more data. The companies say they expect to close the deal in mid-2025, all still subject to regulatory approval. Plus, remembering an NBA giant, Hall of Famer and ESPN broadcasting legend Bill Walton, who died after a battle with cancer at the age of 71. A fierce competitor in college and in the pros, helping the Celtics win in 1986 despite his injuries. And today's Celtics honoring Walton after they won the Eastern Conference, sweeping their series against the Indiana Pacers. 4-0. The Celtics are back in the finals for the second time in 3 years. And we may see who they'll face off against after the Dallas Mavericks take on the Minnesota Timberwolves. That game tonight. Of course, the Dallas favorite, Luka. All eyes on him. But guys, who are you rooting for?
Oh, Dallas, definitely.
Oh, I like the Celtics.
Do you?
Yeah. I mean, I got to go with Boston. I got to go with Boston.
Our EP is
like, wait a minute.
I'm like, no, we're not cheering for Minnesota.
All right, Melissa, thank you very much. Good to see you, Fred. All right, still ahead here on GMA3 on this Tuesday. Our team is on the ground reporting from Israel with new details on that deadly Israeli airstrike in Rafah.
Plus the exhibit here at home highlighting the history of hip-hop. GMA3 when we come back.
Nice.
Welcome back to GMA3. Growing questions surrounding how Israel is carrying out airstrikes in southern Gaza. This after repeated strikes, the most recent in the city of Rafah, killed at least 50 Palestinians, injuring over 200 more. Officials initially saying the attack was supposed to target significant Hamas terrorists.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu now calling the deaths of civilians a tragic mishap. And here to tell us all about it is ABC foreign correspondent Britt Clennett. She is on the ground there in Tel Aviv. Good to see you, my friend.
Hi there, DeMarco. Yeah, so the picture is grim again today. You know, as it reels from that horrific attack, Rafah is under bombardment again today. Reports of civilians, guys, having to flee Western Rafah once again. I spoke to a family just a little earlier who said they've had to move 5 times during this war. Say they don't know where they're going to go next because aid groups say there is no safe place in Gaza. Now, our team on the ground in Gaza sent from the scene footage which really shows the aftermath of the attack. The scorched area, you can see a charred vehicle, burnt belongings, including blankets and clothes.
And Britt, I have to ask you, what are the biggest questions that need to be answered after this most recent strike?
I think a big question is going to be, look, how did a precision strike that the IDF said they were carrying out, how did it turn into this firestorm that we saw that killed and injured dozens of people? You know, the IDF said it targeted 2 senior Hamas officials, and Netanyahu came out to say it was a technical failure and a tragic mishap, raising more and more questions. But we do have newly released information from an IDF official who said that the 2 Hamas officials, militants rather, that were the targets were hiding in a structure. They say the first that broke out, the fire rather, that broke out nearby following the strike. They're still investigating what caused that. They also said that 2 munitions were fired from a fighter jet, and the officials said that the IDF was operating 600 feet away from that safe zone, which is kind of the controversial point as well in all of this.
And Britt, this attack is drawing condemnation from world leaders here. In fact, French President Macron is calling for an immediate ceasefire. What type of impact could this attack have on Israel, especially with their stance on the world stage?
Yeah, you're right, DeMarco. Look, Israel's government is facing unprecedented levels of diplomatic pressure now, as well as the growing pressure here at home to get those hostages back. The UN's human rights chief, he said that the attack suggested that there had been no apparent change in the methods and means of warfare used by Israel that have already led to so many civilian deaths, despite that law by the UN's top court ruled against its Rafah offensive just 2 days before this strike.
And one of the things that was destroyed in this strike was a hospital there in Rafah. What does this mean for those people there on the ground?
Yeah, so what we do know is that this hospital, this Kuwaiti hospital, has now said that it is no longer operational. Now, this is something that we're hearing time and again during this war. They say it's because of Israeli attacks near and around the hospital. But again, you know, this is something that is already the system in Gaza, the healthcare system in Gaza has been brought to its knees. It has been stressed on many different levels. Even without a full-scale Israeli ground invasion into Rafah, its medical facilities were already overwhelmed, struggling to cope with a surge of emergency cases as they suffer a lack of capacity of staff, equipment. So already medical care in Gaza is strained, and now another hospital saying that they can't operate. It's going to have devastating consequences once again.
And that our region has been bracing for a potential invasion of Rafah by Israel. Is it the possibility that that could happen?
Look, we shouldn't speculate at this point, but certainly what you're hearing is more this growing frustration from the White House. You know, Rafah was always a sticking point, and after this attack, with the images, you know, going across the world of the, as I say, that firestorm, that burning inferno, it's going to create more anger and not just put pressure on Israel, but put pressure on Israel's staunchest ally, the U.S. We heard from Netanyahu saying from the National Security Security Council, calling the images devastating, heartbreaking, saying that Israel must do whatever it can to protect civilians. And President Biden himself, we have to remember, he's previously voiced his opposition to Israel's offensive in Rafah. His administration even suspended a shipment of weapons to Israel over concerns about how they might be used. So the White House continues to reiterate, though, that Israel does have the right to defend itself and protect its civilians, but its patience appears to be wearing thinner and thinner, especially now given the repeated warnings against a full-scale attack in Rafah. And of course, what we saw in Rafah at that refugee tent, as I say, will be generating a lot more frustration.
ABC News foreign correspondent Rick Clennett, thank you so much for being with us today. Just ahead here on GMA3, bling at its best.
The new museum jewelry exhibit featuring the brilliant history across 50 years of hip-hop when we come back.
We've got the exclusive view behind the table. Every day, right after the show, while the topics are still hot, the ladies go deeper into the moments that make the View the View. The Views Behind the Table podcast. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
When it comes to winning elections, is it really the economy, stupid? Are soccer moms the quintessential swing voter? And does it matter which candidate you'd rather share a beer with? Every election cycle, cliches come easy. But are they right? In a new series on the 538 Politics podcast, we're taking a look back at conventional wisdom from past elections. Where did that wisdom come from? And does it hold up today? Find the Campaign Throwback series in the 538 Politics feed wherever you get your podcasts.
We are back now with a new tribute highlighting half a century of hip-hop bling called Ice Cold, an exhibit of hip-hop jewelry. The display can be seen at the American Museum of Natural History and puts a spotlight on all that glitters on our favorite rappers throughout the years.
Ice Cold, a hip-hop jewelry exhibition, tells the story of how jewelry has been such a key part of the culture since the beginning. I wrote the book that the exhibit is based on, also by the same name, Ice Cold. Also, Coach K and Karam Gill, who are my co-curators, they also produced and directed a documentary. The exhibit, the book, the documentary, all kind of work in tandem. But of course, the exhibit is the only place that you can see the pieces up close and personal. So it's just really cool, you know, to be here in the Gems Hall at the American Museum of Natural History for that. We have pieces that are from, you know, the late 70s, early 80s, Jam Master Jay's Adidas pendant. And then you follow that through line and you start seeing pieces like the Nas QB pendant, the Ghostface Eagle cuff, Biggie's, you know, Jesus piece. And then you fast forward, you know, to artists like Pharrell, artists like A$AP Rocky and Ferg and Tyler, who all lent pieces for the show. Like Tyler's bellhop piece is one of my favorites in the show. And you understand that it's all part of this great continuum. From the beginning, right, of when jewelry started to, you know, be worn by hip-hop artists, a lot of mainstream jewelers like, you know, Tiffany's, the Cartiers, the Van Cleefs of the world were not, you know, wanting to work with hip-hop artists. You start also seeing this newer generation of artists, which I'm really excited to include. Jewelers like Johnny Nelson, who's a young jeweler out of Brooklyn. Even Alligator Jesus, who made the Lil Nas X grills and the Bad Bunny grills. It's really important to show just also the jewelers, how they've evolved.
I love it. I love it. It takes you back to that LL Cool J era, too. You remember the Adidas jumpsuits with no T-shirt, but all the bling?
You know those Adidas jumpsuits are back.
Oh, they're back. Yeah, they never left, right? All right, Ice Cold, an exhibition of hip-hop jewelry is on display at the American Natural Museum of History now through January 2025. Go check it out.
And just ahead here on GMA3, treating heat rash, Dr. Jen joins us with her prescription for wellness.
And later, living sustainably, the eco-trailblazer behind the Blue Land brand when we come back.
Dr. Jen is back, and we're talking about that beautiful point in a woman's life called menopause and hormone therapy.
Yeah, so there is a worldwide cancer conference that is going on now. An abstract just presented a few days ago that is truly getting worldwide attention because it has to do with certain risks of other types of cancers facing women on hormone replacement therapy. For some context here, we're talking about estrogen alone estrogen and progesterone compared to placebo, and some damage and myth and misunderstanding that was created back in 2002 with something called the WHI study. So they did another analysis of women in this study. So they have 10, 20 years of follow-up data, and they found that women who were taking just estrogen for hormone replacement therapy because they had a hysterectomy, they did not have a uterus, had an increased risk of developing ovarian cancer, their ovaries remained, and dying from that ovarian cancer, compared to women who were taking estrogen and progesterone, who had no increased risk. And then interestingly, the women on estrogen and progesterone found to have a lower risk of endometrial cancer. So I think a lot of this data confirmed what we had known for a while. A lot of it reminds us that when you talk about treating a woman with menopausal symptoms with hormone replacement therapy, that you can't just look at one body part, you have to look at the whole woman.
There are other options.
There are more options now than ever. Some of them are prescription non-hormonal options, and some of them are complementary options, some of them even dietary. So I think that women facing hormonal symptoms with menopause need to speak to their doctor and need to tell them that there is new data, there is new option, and they need to educate themselves. And sometimes they need to educate their doctor.
Best advice there. We're back in a moment. Stay with us.
People who disappear without a trace.
Where is she?
The most notorious murder cases in New York.
Pure evil.
And the most devious killers.
There's a Hannibal Lecter feel to him.
For chilling true crime stories, follow the True Crime NYC podcast wherever you listen.
Oh my God, I love this kid.
All right, welcome back to GMA3, What You Need to Know. Say hi to 7-day-old baby Trent of Ohio going viral for his, shall we say, scowl. The photographer who's been at the job for more than a decade now, Lauren Carson, says she can't remember a baby with this expressive face and this much intense eye contact. Welcome to the world, Trent. Trent is like, who woke me up?
What I want to know is what Trent was thinking.
Look at that.
Because clearly he's got something going on in his mind about what's happening to him.
Maybe he didn't like the little outfit or something.
Baby's got a lot of personality.
Or the camera in his face.
Wow.
It's very cute. Very cute.
Dr. Jen's back, and she's here answering one of your medical questions. Here it is. I recently found out I have a gallstone. When should I ask my doctor about treatment? That's from Jenna M.
Okay, well, I assume from the way Jenna phrased the question that it was found incidentally, right? Because a lot of times when we go imaging or studying one part of the body, we see other parts of the body, and then we say, oh, by the way, you might have a kidney stone, or you might have a gallstone, or you might have some diverticulitis, depending on what part of the body is being imaged. Gallstones are very, very common. They're very common amongst women. They get more common with age. And so if you're told, by the way, we saw a gallstone, you should ask how big, how many. And if you haven't had symptoms, intense right upper quadrant pain right over here, particularly after eating, leave it alone. If it's very large and has caused symptoms, and sometimes the symptoms can be serious, they can block up a duct, which can make people very, very sick, then usually it's treated with surgery, usually minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery. But still, if it's found incidentally, don't mess with your gallstones if they're not messing with you.
All right, your prescription for wellness.
Okay, it has to do timely with how to treat heat rash. Have either of you guys ever had heat rash? Ugh, me too. And it can be incredibly annoying, can come on out of the blue. Obviously, the hotter it gets, some people are more susceptible than others. But these are some good kind of easy remedies. Number one, you want to try to keep your skin cool and dry even after you have the heat rash, but certainly before if you're known that you're prone to it. Wearing cotton to eliminate friction or anything that's going to be rubbing against that, because again, on the arms, chest, and legs are common locations. And then over-the-counter anti-itch medications, particularly a topical steroid, just for short-term use, or Benadryl can definitely help. I've had this, you guys, it's super annoying, and most of the time it's just time to get over it.
Time.
Time.
And don't get hot, which is kind of impossible in the summer.
Right? All right, Doc, thank you very much. And folks, we would love to hear from you, so hit us up on Instagram with all of your medical questions for Dr. Jen at ABC GMA3. All right, welcome back to GMA3. We are honoring Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And today, we want to introduce you to a mom on a mission.
Yes, Sarah Paiji Yoo went from a career in investment banking to an entrepreneur in fashion and beauty. But when she became a mom, something changed and her focus shifted to what the future would look like for her kids. And now she's working to make it easier for people to be environmentally friendly.
So we raised $3 million.
What? At what valuation?
At the $13.5 million valuation.
She got a shark to bite on Shark Tank.
Done.
Named on the list of 100 powerful women entrepreneurs. Her eco-cleaning brand, Blue Land, named Best in Business.
This is plastic.
And it all began when CEO Sarah Paiji Yoo became a mom.
I was doing all this research into the water that I would use to mix with my baby son's formula. I was horrified to learn that, a liter contains hundreds of pieces of microplastics that are now showing back up in the food we eat, the water we drink. It's in our blood.
And so this is our compost bin that we keep in the freezer.
She's a Southern California native, but says it's her Thai, Chinese, and Korean ancestry that first planted the seeds of sustainability, all thanks to her parents.
How do you think how you grew up sort of shaped you, who you are today, the things that you've chosen to do?
For me, my parents both immigrated here with very little, and so there was just always a mindfulness of not being wasteful. We would do, whatever it took to not turn on the AC. I remember my mom ripping paper towels, in half because she thought we didn't need a full one. You'd see them drying on the kitchen counter. It just starts effervescing and dissolving on its own.
Like one of those medicine tabs.
Yeah.
What was the first thing you decided you would try to go for?
I started making my own toothpaste tablets and powders in my kitchen. And I thought it was I was like, why wouldn't everybody do this for the planet? And to the question of would you make the switch? 85% of people were absolutely not.
So how did you land on the product you ended up bringing?
I was cleaning down my son's high chair with a multi-surface cleaner. And so I just had the question of what if people could just buy the part they needed, right? I went to these cleaning product manufacturers. They all looked at me like I had 3 heads. They were pretty condescendingly, explaining to me that, all the products they make are liquid, right? They don't even own tableting machinery. And so we just went to LinkedIn and just started looking for chemists.
You developed a new category in cleaning, dry tablets that make cleaning solutions refillable.
Truly, this had never been done before. A hand soap tablet, for example, had never existed anywhere in the world before.
5 years later, Blue Land is generating about $200 million in sales of over 10 million products.
We talk a lot about, we need diversity in boardrooms and at the top of businesses. When you were deciding to do this, did you see people that looked like you?
Initially, I didn't. There are many pockets of environmentalism and sustainability that do feel, overwhelmingly white. And so I think in those spaces, I did feel like an outlier. When you think about the communities that are disproportionately impacted by pollution, by climate change, oftentimes they are communities of color. And so you absolutely have so many leaders and environmental advocates of color that are out there. I think it's so important to amplify diverse voices and experiences because that's how we, make the environmental movement larger, more inclusive, and more effective.
That is so important. And $200 million in sales, 10 million products. Mm-hmm. Wow. Plus she's saving the earth.
Right. Well, and they work. She said she tested them on her mom to see if her mom liked them.
Mama knows best, right?
They were good to go.
All right. A good story right there. 2 of her biggest tips, by the way, always carry a reusable water bottle and never take free things like swag or utensils from a restaurant.
Easy things we can all do.
Okay. I'm on board.
Up next, when we come back, we are cooking with soul here. Salvi soul, that is. Welcome back to GMA3. Today we are filling our souls, our Salvi souls to be exact, with a recipe from the first Salvadoran cookbook released by a major U.S. publisher.
And we've got author of the Savvy Soul Cookbook, Carla T. Vasquez, here to share her take on a classic dish. And you can purchase, a copy of her new book by scanning the QR code below. Welcome, Carla. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. Yes.
So we're making pupusas. Did I say it right?
You said it perfectly.
Yay.
Yes. So the national dish of El Salvador is a pupusa. And it is actually a word that comes from the Pipil Nahuatl people, who were the original people of El Salvador. And how we make it is we're going to use some masa. So you're going to get your hands in here, okay?
Let's go.
So this has already been hydrated with some water. I have a bigger chunk here, so you have that small.
Ours is all ready to go.
Yes. And you should have a little bowl of water here.
Okay.
So typically what we'll do is you can just go ahead and roll it up into a ball.
Okay.
Okay. And one of the fillings we have is a very popular filling. It has loroco and cheese. Loroco is an edible flower that we love to eat.
Loroco?
Loroco, that's right. You've got all these words. Yes. Yes. So as you get your, your little masa here, you're also going to get into your little bowl.
Okay.
And this you're going to amasar.
Oh, okay.
So you can sit down there. Yeah, we got ahead of ourselves there. So you're going to amasar. This just means to massage it. You're going to clump it together.
Okay.
We want to prep this ahead of the shaping, because otherwise you get a little chaotic.
Does it smell good? Does it smell good?
It does smell
yes,
good.
Yes, you smell it, yeah. So some people might describe it as a pungent smell, and it is. The flavor of it pairs so beautifully with the cheese, and it can have a little bit of bitterness, but if you love artichokes, asparagus, then you're going to love.
It does have like an artichoke-y kind of smell.
Yes, I really believe that recipes are a way to touch home their addresses in some ways, right? And so this to me says you are eating food in El Salvador.
Okay.
So we have done that. You can wipe your hands with some of your little towel there. And now,
giant mess.
all good. The kitchen gets messy, but it gets beautiful too. So we have our little masa ball. So you're going to put a little your fingertips in.
Okay.
Yes, good job. So now this can be tricky, but you'll be taken care of. So put your little bundle right there.
Okay.
And then you're going to begin with this hand. You're going to start shaping it.
Oh, okay.
So.
Okay.
Yes, look at you.
A little flatter.
Yes, and you don't have to go fast. You can slow it down.
Slow it down.
Slow it down, yeah. It's not a competition.
It's always a competition.
Although it can be a competition. It can be. So you'll start to see that it's going a little bigger. Now, if you start to see cracks, do you know what that means? It means that there's not enough moisture. If it was sticking to your hand, then it would mean that it had too much moisture. So go ahead and, put some more water in there. So this trick right here is something my great-grandmother would do.
I like that.
And then you rotate that.
So the ends are even.
Yeah. So now that you have it about this size, this is a good size, not for finished product, but for the filling. So go ahead and clump as big of a little ball. Don't get too greedy though, because that happens to me. I get too greedy.
So I was about to say, I like a lot in the middle.
And then it's like, well, there goes my pupusa. So here, get your little ball, and you're gonna.
I think I went greedy.
It's okay. This is the first time you're doing it. And so what you're going to do is try to press your filling as close to the masa as possible. So you're rotating again, and you see how it's kind of. Okay, so you can clean your fingers with a little bit of water. Put on the towel.
We got about 40 seconds.
Okay, so now we are closing this here.
Okay.
So pressing, you're just like a dumpling. I'm sure you've seen, you're trying to have all the seams touch.
Okay. Oh, I see.
Yes.
There we go.
Let me see.
I have clearly made a dumpling in my life.
Yes, okay.
Oh, you're doing really good.
Now you're going to pinch.
Oh, but it popped at the bottom. This is the problem with the greed.
Oh, yes. The problem with this is a life lessons here at the kitchen.
And you dedicated this to your mom and grandmother, right?
Yes.
Why?
I dedicated because it's important to give credit where credit is due. And the women of El Salvador are the ones who have brought this cuisine to this country, and it's important to acknowledge them. So, and here I'm talking but not explaining. So now that you have that filling, you're doing great. Oh, you're doing great.
It's overfilled.
You're doing great.
All good.
We like a fluffy filling.
Yes, a fluffy filling is always a good sign. Then you're just going to pat it out. And if you start to see those cracks, you're good. Now, to make sure your griddle's good, you great sound, right? And then flatten it out a bit more, making sure it's good, and then you can set it down right there.
And then real quick, because we're out of time, how long would you keep it on there?
About 4 to 5 minutes on each side. This one's already good here, so it's gotten a good color.
Okay, that's the finished product.
Ooh, yum,
yeah.
yum.
Let me taste one of these fresh ones.
Yes, go ahead. Have a little bite. I think this one's done too, so I'll have a little bite of this one. So usually, yes, and you get a nice little cheese
You need
pool
the cheese
right
in
here.
the middle.
Woo! See, you got that nice cheese pool right there. So.
That is awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Carla. And you can get Salvi Soul Cookbook. It's available everywhere books are sold. Congratulations to
Thank
you.
you both so much.
And for today's recipe, go to goodmorningamerica.com/food or scan that QR code right there on your screen.
You know what it tastes like? Hot water cornbread. You know about that in the South. It really does taste good. Thank you. Thank you, Chef.
Thank you
We
both
appreciate
so
it.
much.
No, of course. All right, welcome back. We have something special just for you today. The epic pop culture musical theater sensation, The Who's Tommy, is taking Broadway by storm.
And we are so happy to have two of the stars of the show with us in studio, Ollie Lewis-Borsky and Allison Laff. Thank you both for being here with us.
Thank you.
And this is particularly special for you because this is your Broadway debut.
Yeah, it is. This has been my dream, and so to be able to actually do it, I'm eternally grateful.
Yeah, you're living your reality right now.
Exactly.
And Allison, you play Mrs. Walker, and when you sing, the crowd just goes crazy. Does that make you nervous, or does it give you energy?
Oh, it energizes me for sure. I mean, the show is a rock opera, so it's built to just go straight through with not a whole lot of applause. So when we do get those bursts of energy from the audience, it's thrilling.
Nice. Just amazing there. Thank you again, Allison and Ollie. Now, The Who's Tommy is playing on Broadway at the Nederlander Theater in New York.
And be sure to check out our GMA3 playlist by scanning that QR code right there on the bottom of your screen.